Please welcome our good friend, Jeff Masagatani.
I want to thank you, Mary. That is just so beautiful. And if you have not yet met this woman, she's incredible. Her story is amazing. And the story behind that song is just so powerful. And it really touched me when I watched it on YouTube the other day. When Rick said that you're going to be performing, I Googled and looked and searched, and I was like, wow. So what a blessing that she's a local. So go see her, go support her. She'll be out at the product table. She has product. It's fabulous. Get it. So, there. All right. It's so great to be back with all of you here in Salt Lake. And thank you this time for not having snow. I really do appreciate it. Ed and I both appreciate it. It's supposed to be about 54 degrees today, 80 down in Vegas. So we know we have clear sailing all the way after our stop at IKEA. So, the Swedish meatballs were good last time. They're going to be good again this time. So, we have to get them while we can, right? So it's an honor and a pleasure to be back with you for the third time in less than 12 months. So thank you for having me back. It's always a joy to be here. This community is so warm and welcoming and so vibrant and so loving and so caring and so generous that I just love coming up and being with you. And Reverend Marty, I love Reverend Marty because he gives me the talk title, usually at least a few weeks in advance. This time it was about a month or so in advance. And he also gives me the quote for the day or for the week. And so it's always interesting to sit with what he's given me and see what happens. And today the title is Getting Unstuck. So when we get to contemplate a talk title like that, then what usually happens is then I get to live it. And I get to experience some stuckness. So thank you, Reverend Marty, for that one. But the joy about that is then I get to work through it, and I get to see it, and I get to experience it, and I get to live it, and I get to be it, and I get to practice it. And then I get to come here, and I get to share what I've gathered in my short time on the planet. And so that's what I want to share with you today, is about getting unstuck. Getting unstuck. So when I was a child, for whatever reason, I had this terrible fear of getting stuck in quicksand. I don't know why. It's a completely irrational fear. It was like, why would I be worried about getting stuck in quicksand? It's because that would imply that I'd have to go someplace where I could possibly get dirty. I'm wearing a pink tie. Do you think I'm going to go get dirty? No. Not going to happen. But with quicksand, what I learned about quicksand and what I learned back then, and I don't know how I came to learn this, but to survive quicksand, what do we need to do? We need to just relax, chill out, rest, and not resist. And then just allow ourselves to float on our back until we can get to the edge or move slowly to the edge, kind of like letting go of the shore and floating into the mystery, right? So I always thought, well, that's so weird. Why is this, And so when I got the Getting Unstuck title, the first thought I had was quicksand. And then that meant resistance and resisting quicksand and letting go of resistance so that I can just float. So that's how I began to get unstuck, at least around this talk title was thinking about quicksand. And what that brought me to was that there are two ideas, I feel, that really contribute to us being stuck in our lives in general. And the first one is just living an unconscious life, being completely unconscious, unaware. What that might look like for some of us is that we're in a comfort zone. It's comfy here. We're in our routine. We are not paying attention. We're just driving the same way to work every single day and not paying attention, then wondering how in the world we got to work, right? Living unconsciously. Or it's just the status quo. Everything seems okay, it feels good, so, why change it? It's just a status quo. Or, as we heard in the earlier song, habit and regret, right? Some things are just habits. And so, that's perfectly fine. Habits can serve us, and they can also contribute to us living unconsciously. and regret. Regret being not present, being not in the present. So if we're not living fully in the present and we're regretting something, that means we're living kind of in the past. We're thinking about the past and we're not living in the present. So again, that's a way of being unconscious. So that was one way of looking at being stuck. Getting stuck is just living unconsciously or being unconscious to life. The other way of looking at being stuck, rather, and a cause of stuck is fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of what if I break my routine. Fear of what might happen if. Right? Uncertainty keeps us stuck. A few other ways that fear looks, or stuckness looks like fear, or fear looks like stuckness. When we experience resistance, when we experience a feeling of being overwhelmed, an experience of feeling incapable, that something's impossible, that we are impatient, that we get discouraged, that we feel hopeless, that we feel inadequate, that we feel scared or angry or cornered or disempowered. All those are aspects of fear, and they all keep us stuck. So fear and unconsciousness, two big ways that we find ourselves stuck and we stay stuck. So an indicator that we might be feeling stuck could be those things there, what I've just shared with you, but it could also be a feeling of feeling paralyzed, or feeling like there's no movement, a feeling of dissonance, a feeling of disconnect, a feeling that life is so difficult and hard and that it's a struggle. We could feel trapped, and we could experience frustration. So that's enough about stuck, right? So how do we get unstuck? The first thing we have to do if we're going to get unstuck is we have to be aware that we're stuck. If we're not aware that we're stuck, if we're living that unconscious life, if we're completely unaware that we're stuck, we can't do anything about it. We can't move. We can't see the forest for the trees, if you will, because we're just stuck. We're not aware of it. So the first thing is to become aware of it. And the way we often become aware of it is by experiencing any one of those lists of feelings that I shared with you just a moment ago. Feeling the paralyzed, feeling the no movement, feeling the discontent, feeling the disconnect is a pretty good indicator that we're stuck. Or if we're talking to ourselves and saying, if this, then that, or when I do this, then I'll have that, is a sense of stuckness, a lack of movement, a lack of freedom. Freedom. So really about getting unstuck is really about experiencing freedom, isn't it? So it's becoming aware that we're not feeling free. It's becoming aware that we're stuck. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is that we need to have a desire to get unstuck. We have to want to be unstuck, because sometimes being stuck is really comfy. You know, if I'm stuck at home on the couch watching TV, in front of my laptop looking at Facebook for hours upon hours upon hours, stuck can be pretty comfy. Stuck means I'm not having to do what I'm being called to do, or not having to change the status quo. And that's okay, if that's what I want my experience of my life to be. And if I don't want to change, if I don't want to really get unstuck, then what I do need to do is I need to forgive myself for not really wanting to be unstuck. And just let it be, and accept it, and be okay with it. But too often we get caught in it should be different. It should be different, but it's not, and so here I am, stuck. And that pulls us into that victimhood. That pulls us into that to me. Everything's happening to me. Everything's happening to me. I have no choice. I have no power. I have no way of making it any different. And as Mary so beautifully sang, how can we take what's before us and make it light? How can we take what's before us and make it light? And it comes primarily from wanting it to be different, and then doing something toward that end. Part of it comes to the next step, I think, when we're looking at it, is that we have to assess the situation, or we don't have to, but we often feel that we have to assess the situation and we have to come up with a solution to the problem, the perceived problem. We have to come up with a solution. Here's the situation, here's where I'm feeling unstuck, so let me look at it, let me assess the situation, and I'm willing for it to change, or not willing, but I'm desiring for it to change, I'm wanting it to change. So what can I do over here? What are some steps I can take to change it, to make it different? And so some of these things, the way these things unfold, or the way these things look is, well, if I'm stuck, I can leverage it. I can try and leverage something, right? Use a counterbalance. And when we're thinking about it in spiritual terms, a counterbalance might be using our spiritual practices, using meditation, using visioning, using spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer. And that's kind of leveraging, right? Trying to make something a little bit different, using those tools that we have available to us. Another way of looking at it is we can wiggle it. Just a little bit, okay? And what does wiggling it do? Wiggling it creates space in our lives. And it creates space between something. If it's something stuck, it creates that space, it creates that opportunity. So it's an opening so that we can then feel freer. Freer. Okay. Just trying to think, could that be a word? No? All right. Another way that we often try to get unstuck is we tap something or we shake it, and looking at it from a spiritual perspective, that might be trying to see it from a different perspective, looking at it, examining it from another way. If we shake something up or stir it or tap it, is looking at it from a different perspective. We can certainly ease it. You know, if your ring is stuck on your finger, you're not going to want to pull it right off, or even try to pull it right off. It's going to really be painful. But we try and ease it, we work it. So slow, methodical, persistent, patience is one way of getting unstuck. We can also try changing it, change the nature of it. So if there's wax stuck in the bottom of a glass, like candle holder, one way of changing it, one way of freeing it is by putting it in the refrigerator, or putting it in the freezer rather, and then it shrinks down a little bit and then it pops right out. Another way of freeing it, getting it out of there, getting it unstuck, would be to melt it all and then pour it out, right? But it's kind of changing the nature of it. And how do we do that here? We do it through affirmations. We do it through prayer. We change our thinking and we change our reality. Another way of looking at it, being free or getting free, is to relax, to not resist. Right? Because the more we resist, the deeper in the quicksand we get, right? So just letting go of that resistance and just being present with what is, and fully being present with what is. And then we can seek assistance, right? We can ask somebody else for help. Hey, I'm kind of stuck here and I really don't know what to do, and maybe you have an answer, or maybe even me just sharing it. Sharing my stuckness will help free it up by giving it voice. And here in our community, we have the opportunity to speak with our prayer partners. If we have a prayer partner, call them up and get prayer. Or call your prayer practitioners and get assistance from them. Have a session with them and help and allow them to help you get unstuck from where we're stuck. Right? So those are all wonderful ways of getting unstuck. And last year, starting in about June of last year, I started noticing myself getting stuck. And it was around school, because as many of you know, as Reverend Linda mentioned, I'm in the Holmes Institute for Ministerial Studies here. It's for Centers for Spiritual Living, as is Myrna, and Myrna's getting ready to graduate this year, so we're very excited for her. Yay! So I was experiencing some resistance, and I was experiencing some stuckness around school, and I was just telling Reverend Marty, it's like, this doesn't feel right. I'm not happy. I'm not enjoying myself. I'm not enjoying what it is that I'm doing. And I'm really not liking the way I'm going about doing school. I feel like I'm just kind of turning my wheels and I'm not really getting anywhere. And I shared that with him, and I shared that with my practitioner, and I shared that with some friends. And so I was opening, and seeking guidance and seeking counsel. And seeking somebody to, help me figure some stuff out. And then I applied what I knew to do. I applied my spiritual tools. I applied treatment and visioning and meditation and, I really applied those tools, and still I was feeling stuck. Still I was feeling stuck. Just grinding away. It's like, there's got to be something here. There's got to be something better. There's got to be a different way. I want this to be different. But wanting something and having the desire for something is not enough. And that was the conclusion I came to. It's not enough. It's not enough to just want it. You have to be willing to do something about it. There has